hidden by the parked cars, and it's very difficult to see them unless you just enter very slowly.
It's not considered a blind driveway, is it? It wouldn't be considered a blind driveway where we could put a sign that, I mean, if they didn't see the driveway, and would that have any merit?
Yeah,
Or
I think
speed bump?
I mean, all driveways, or if there's cars parked, you know, if you shoot right out, you're gonna stand in the risk of getting fender bender. We would have intersections in town that are like that. If you stop at the stop sign, at the stop bar, and expect to be able to see both directions, you're not gonna be able to. You're gonna have to ease up to the intersection before you go to make sure you can see.
Steve, the petition was submitted by Deborah Hutchings. Is this petition submitted on behalf of residences or the apartment ownership itself? I guess I'm taking this to your point about the available parking.
My impression was it was the people that live there.
So do we know what the management of,
They would like to see it come out. They'll put the sign, cars only. Because I believe she is the manager.
okay, so hold on, so let me get this clear. So the petition is to remove everything,
No, the petition is put up, only allow cars to park there.
cars. Okay, so this is not about eliminating all parking.
No.
It's just cars only.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jody.
So if we would put something up like that, does that not give the residents some sort of expectation that it will be enforced? And is that gonna be a problem? I
mean, you can
I
enforce
don't mind putting it up, but if
anything.
we're not gonna enforce it, then
We're
we
gonna have to
kinda
come up
led
with
the
a
residents
We'll have
down
to
a
come up with a
path.
joint definition as to what a car is and
Steve, when you say no trucks on a road or no trucks parking, people think of dump trucks and
Right.
semis
Over
and
the
stuff like
road.
that. They don't think of
Not a pickup.
pickup trucks.
right.
So that's why it's not enforceable.
Yeah, it just seems to me that if we did put a sign up, we're sort of misleading the residents that we're solving their problem and we're really not. Now, maybe it would help that people would voluntarily comply, but I think that would need to be made clear that enforcement is not gonna come from the city police or whoever, that it would have to come from somewhere else.
And I could put a sign up that says, cars only, please. And if somebody don't want to do that, there's really no enforcement.
Other than that, I mean, there's big pickups, there's little pickups, there's SUVs that are bigger than some pickups, so I don't,
Minivans,
minivans.
yeah.
So what's council's pleasure?
What do you recommend, Mayor?
I think Steve would prefer to do nothing, but I think the second choice is cars only, please. Is that correct?
Could we put a sign up that said, caution, intersection, how they do with trucks entering the highway when they're doing construction, watch for cars entering,
mean,
from
on-
parking lot.
On McCutcheon to warn vehicles that there's a driveway ahead.
Yeah.
They're coming out of the driveway and they can't see them.
I think there is a safety placard or a yellow sign that has a symbol of that effect. I'm not sure how much.
I mean, there's no trees there, there's no corner,
It's just a driveway.
it's just the driveway.
Yeah, two driveways actually.
Yeah.
So is the issue that the residents who are pulling out of that parking lot are afraid of getting hit from the cars that are going too fast on McCutcheon?
I think so.
Have there been any accidents?
Yes, there has. I think that's what's prompted the petition.
There was major renovation going over there a year and a half or so ago, and there were trailers and such parked all over in that area, which posed some problem. A lot of people walk their dogs in that area, but I don't see them walking across the street.
So I think whatever we do, Steve, maybe having a sit-down discussion with the management of the place would be good, to say, you know, this is what your residents have requested, and here's what we can do, and here's what we can't do. So they all understand what's going on before we
Sure.
run out there and throw
If you look
signs
at that block, there are no houses on either side of the street, really. So the people parking there are either visitors or employees.
My understanding is employees, where the employees work.
So if we put a sign up, they're probably gonna follow it just out of courtesy to their other employees. Maybe.
Makes you wonder if management just can't talk to their employees now. I mean,
If you just look at the parking lot itself, it's a full parking lot, and if you've been out there, it's often full. There's a little bit of space, it seems to me, a little bit to the east on their property. If they wanted to expand some parking, they could probably put some off-street parking in there. But I don't think we haven't received this request from the ownership. But we've heard it from management of the facility, but not ownership.
It's my understanding she's the manager of the facility, yes.
Yeah. But ownership could expand parking on site
That's
and
a definite possibility, yes.
provide parking for their employees and visitors, and could be no parking on both sides of the street at that point.
Well, I don't think we should put up a sign that doesn't have any force behind it. That seems like a silly move.
And I do think we gotta be a little careful if the city on the right-of-way is saying this is a dangerous stretch or a danger ahead. That actually places some liability on us if we're making that statement.
Can we just extend the current no parking, like another car's length up the hill?
We could try a couple of car lengths and see if that helped.
Yeah.
I mean, That
Well,
way they still have some parking, but also safety's taken into consideration.
Yeah, I actually had a question about that, because and maybe it's just where the map's drawn, it's hard to see, but it even looks like kind of on the south end there, that south entrance, there's cars parked in that 25-foot no parking zone. So is that a new parking zone that just the image is?
I think we kind of spruced it up for them.
Okay,
Try to
okay.
help out with the
Yeah.
situation.
I think we should extend the no parking another 25 feet.
We can go and try another space or two, and we're good for 90 days on something like that. And then if one space works, we'll bring back a
Yeah.
ordinance. If they need 2 spaces, we'll try 2 spaces.
have you met with the manager just to talk about the nuances on that enforceability question?
I have not.
So maybe you ought to do that as well. I mean, rather than them get the impression that we just said no.
Yeah.
I was going to report back after the meeting and see what we could do.
Okay. So, Matt, how about if Steve meets with them and proposes the idea of a couple of more spaces and see what they say?
Well, the problem I have with that is if it is an ongoing safety issue, I think we need to address it. And if we can do it in 90 days without passing an ordinance, I think we need to do something. We can't just say, well, we'll just continue to let cars and trucks and whatever park there. Although I agree with you, Mayor, that I think the management, if it is employees parking there, that the management of that complex could certainly do something. But if they choose not to, the safety of our residents is at issue.
So, Steve, reading between the lines, you don't necessarily see a line of sight problem, but if you go back and propose a couple of more spaces either way, is that window washing, or that's really gonna make a difference?
They need to be careful coming out of the driveway. Regardless, I think that's the problem is that it's very difficult to see. You can't enter the street on the run. You have to come up and pull out cautiously, because it's a hill and it's hard to see oncoming cars. The only way to really make it safer would be to take all the parking off. And then there's no place to park.
Are the curbs currently painted 25 foot?
I think we got a paint here, didn't we? I don't know.
It doesn't seem that far to me, but
I can certainly make sure they are, and
Just
then
three
we can
car
go
lights.
with some
yeah,
more.
doesn't seem that far to me.
Okay, still not sure what you guys want. Is there a motion?
So if Steve says you can expand the no parking without an ordinance at this point
90
and
days,
test it
yes.
out for 90 days, I would move that we do that, talk to the management, tell them what's happening, and see if that addresses the issue within the next 90 days.
I second that.
Somebody will second that?
I did.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next item is an ordinance considering a use tax for the November election.
Well, as you've heard us talk a little bit about the use tax over the last, really, years, there was something in excess of 260 Missouri cities and counties that have gone to their voters successfully with the passage of a use tax, and that's really a sales tax application to out-of-state purchases. We tend to think of that as internet sales, but it's more accurately described as true out-of-state purchases, many of which are done through the internet, but it's an out-of-state purchase, and it poses the same sales taxes that you would adopt on those. And it really becomes an equity issue so that your brick and mortar are competing fairly with the out-of-state vendors who otherwise would have an advantage on local sales tax. The state of Missouri has a use tax in effect, so when you make purchases out of state, if there is a connection or a nexus, as it's defined in Missouri, you're paying the 4.225% Missouri use tax, but every city or county would have to elect to adopt their own use tax equivalent to their sales tax rate. So you might remember a few months ago, we sat down in this room and talked quite a bit about a 10-year plan. And, you know, we've seen this. So as we know, our revenue sources and taxes in particular are growing steadily, but they grow at 1% to 2%, and cost of doing business and compensation and minimum wage and lots of other things are growing at a faster pace than that.
Yeah.
And that leaves us so that we continue to find ourselves trying to do more and more with less and less. But for the most part, I feel we've done a really good job doing that, but it is becoming a bit critical, particularly as it affects public safety. I don't want to say it's exclusively public safety, because a lot of our operations are dependent on tax revenues, but we're having difficulty competing in salaries today on public safety because of a number of counties around us and throughout Missouri who have enacted a specific law enforcement sales tax in their county that allowed them to raise rates. So we have cities as close as 50 miles away that are paying 30% more in a starting wage for public safety positions than what we're able to pay here. We have lots of other expenses coming, whether that's the animal shelter completion project at some point in the future, or whether that's our replacement of all of our radios, both mobile and portable. We have lots of expenses coming. As we're looking at the budget for the next several years, this becomes a crisis compounded going forward. So we've talked about the use tax. It is estimated, and it changes for every community out there, at about 10 to 12% of our sales tax receipts would be captured under a use tax. And that's all dependent on how much purchasing your businesses and residents are doing in out-of-state purchasing. If we are inclined to do this, and we think this is something that is becoming urgent and critical for us, the soonest election we could entertain that is in November 5th election. We would have to certify that action by August 27th. We have had conversations with the chamber, we've had conversations with the Phelps County and with the city of St. James, all of them who are deliberating, doing the same action. They're sort of waiting to see what kind of reaction they hear from the Rolla City Council. And we're not asking for a final reading tonight, but we are asking for an ordinance that would call a first reading, contemplating a call for this use tax in November. Part of this is an education process, and the use tax is a strange sounding tax because it's a tax placed on where the items are consumed or used as a point of at the cash register. It's the way we tend to think of the sales tax that's out there. So one of the things we would certainly want to do, if council is supportive of this, is we want to host a forum, bring somebody down. We've reached out to Missouri Municipal League. There's a spokesperson there who's really educated in this, can get the nuances of it. On the surface, it sounds really simple, But as soon as you start asking questions about what about this and that, it can become very complex very quickly. And the fact that you really can't pinpoint exactly what those sales are leaves it a little bit gray. What we're proposing in the ordinance we have with you tonight is an earmarking of at least the 1 cent general fund portion of it towards public safety needs, and then the balance on street capital improvement, parks dedicated to capital improvements in those aspects. Sort of assigning that value based on where voters had previously approved the sales tax element of it. So I throw that out for your consideration and discussion tonight, and if we want to do this, we're going to have to do it between the next meeting and this one. Otherwise, we're back into an April issue, and that is complicated by other issues that will likely be on that ballot at that time. So happy to have some question and answer on this issue.
Okay, so a question that I have, John, is, I mean, you guys have had the chance to look at this and think a lot and have dealt with other sorts of issues before. Do you feel like there's enough time to educate the public on this issue? As long as we get the ball moving between now and sort of November?
I do, and if the council takes the action by the, let's say, mid-August, elections really are a 30 to 45-day window, and so that doesn't give us a lot of time. That means we've got to pull together a grassroots effort because the city can only educate, can't advocate.
Yeah.
So working with the chamber, working with some businesses, we're going to have to work on a real grassroots program outside of the halls of City Hall. And, that means putting a campaign together. And in about 6 weeks prior to an election, when people are really in tune and sort of paying attention to what's coming, I don't know if it's good or bad. There's not a lot planned for the November election, so it's going to be a little quiet out there. So I think we should be able to gain some traction on this issue. There's some pressing needs of the community. I think we can effectively communicate that to the public. But it's not a lot of time. We're going to have to hit the ground running if we're going to do this.
All right.
Is allocating 1% sufficient for public safety, do you think?
Well, it goes a long way. I mean, the call ultimately is the city councils as to how they assign that becomes just a general purpose tax. But really, if you think of it, our sales tax is a 1 cent general fund sales tax. We have a ½ cent for transportation, a ½ cent for capital improvement dedicated to the street fund, and we have a ¼ cent for parks. All of those sales tax and revenue streams are being diminished as purchasers are moving towards a out-of-state purchase. And so that verifies or validates what the voters had originally approved for sales tax purchases. But that ultimately is in the council's control.
Yeah.
It's drafted in there.
I think the idea is to keep them in the buckets that they are already in.
Yeah.
So would that be included in the ballot language, or would that be an understood sort of division of how it's going to go?
Well, it's in the ballot language to the degree we can. So we just worded it. If you look at the language that's on page 6B, 2, and 3, the title would be, "Shall the City of Rolla, Missouri impose a local use tax for public safety services and capital improvements at the same rate at the total local sales tax rate currently at 2.25%. So one of the restrictions when you do a ballot is you can't overcomplicate the wording, and I'm afraid if we were to actually qualify, it'd be split 1% here, a ½ % here. People are going to be so confused that it actually works against one of the, I don't know if it's state law or if it's a constitutional amendment, that you have a ballot that's clean enough to understand. So
So that might be something in talking points or education in that 6 weeks before the election period, but not necessarily in the ballot language.
correct.
I think the thing on that one is to just keep it simple and keep it honest, okay? We're not really assigning, I wouldn't have used that word, we're not assigning it to this department or the next. We're just applying an existing sales tax in an existing way that we do it now.
And just to clarify, you can't change the ballot language very much. The statute actually has the majority of the ballot language. So you are required to substantially comply.
Okay.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out the very last sentence in the ballot says, "A use tax return shall not be required to be filed by persons whose purchases from out-of-state vendors do not in total exceed $2,000 in any calendar year."
Yeah.
Okay, that's already the actual law. It's never really been enforced, but unfortunately, that language is in the statute that gives this wording. So this goes to Lance's point. We really don't have the right to pull that sentence out, although it doesn't I don't think it adds any clarity to what we're trying to do here, but,
So do people actually, businesses file these?
yeah,
use
businesses
tax
do, and
returns?
certainly anyone with a good accountant who's advising would tell you, even doing your personal sales tax, or, yeah, personal tax returns, if you spend over $2,000 today on out-of-state purchases, that's supposed to be reported in the tax paid for that. If you have a use tax, you're supposed to be paying the state's
Oh.
portion of the tax. But the Department of Revenue doesn't pursue that really beyond businesses. So businesses tend to file that just part of their quarterly returns if they do much purchasing out of state.
Questions? If not, can we have the first reading?
Mayor,
Yes.
one of the concerns I have with really any tax is, we shrouded in this notion that we need this money to fund government. And then we get the 2.25% and we grow government. And then down the road, we need more money. And then we're in another crisis. And right now, we're being told that this money's not earmarked for anything, it's just going to general revenue. And it sounds great to better fund law enforcement and to take care of some of the problems that we have. But I don't know that passing and charging the citizens more taxes does much to remedy the problems if we continue to grow government. I mean, how are we to assure the taxpayers that, we're going to use this money wisely and we're not just going to continue to bloat government?
Could I make a comment?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think in this particular case, from everything we've learned at the meeting about our funding, we're not, at least seems to me, it doesn't look like we're looking to grow our government as much as stop a leak where people used to spend in the city, they're now spending online, places outside of our tax base is collected currently. And I think in this particular case, I think we're stopping a leak as opposed to collecting this money to then grow our government. I think we're really collecting this money to make up for where we're losing it in the past, and looking at ways to take care of that leak that we have. And I just say that from my perspective, I'm very supportive, and I think this will be a really important thing for our public safety and for the future financial health of our city too. So, thank you.
And the only thing I would say, the way we're wording this is that it can't be used for other municipal purposes beyond public safety and capital improvement. So now there'll be an ordinance. So let's say we go to the voters and the voters are fortunate to approve this. The council will adopt an ordinance that will actually codify how that's done. Now, granted, city councils, future councils can modify ordinances, but the real burden of being able to demonstrate responsible government really rests with this board, ultimately, when it comes right down to it. So I don't know how to define that or to lock that in beyond the priorities established by the city council. And ultimately, there would have to be an ordinance adopted to put this in effect that would spell out how, with more detail than what we would otherwise have in the ballot language.
So you're suggesting that if the ordinance passes, then the city council at that time would have to designate where the money would be spent?
Yeah,
Or-
they'll have to do an ordinance that will actually notify the Department of Revenue that the tax was approved and spell out how it's to be used. It's how we've done the parks. For instance, Prop P was done that way, and it specifies that a quarter cent was lasting for 8 years, a 16th of that will drop off. That's all laid out in that ordinance.
Right, but this is
So council can-
this is a permanent tax, so this would not drop off in 10 years or
Right,
15
but the use
years.
of it and the year marking or the placing of it
Is the
is
same.
done by this, it's done by the
Yeah.
same process of an ordinance.
Now, I want to address Councilman Schott's comments just a little bit, because if our issues in our budget were just due to the leaks from sales tax losses on these purchases from out of state, it's my understanding that this tax will not address our current budget shortfalls. Is that correct?
If you look down the road, it doesn't satisfy all of the requirements that we've got. If we continue to grow at 2, 3, 4%, operating costs.
So in a sense, we're asking for more money, and we haven't even been able, or we're not even going to be able to address the problems that we have. To just
Got
fix
it.
some of the leaks, to use Councilman Schott's term.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what we're gonna collect. So, using some general assessments of 400 to 600,000, but truth is, we don't know. I
Right.
think there's an equal chance that says it won't fix the problem as it will fix the problem. That's number one. The other thing, Matt, I think that's how relevant it is, I don't know, but how many dollars, how much of our predicament today is because we didn't do something for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years that should have been done had a use tax been in effect. So now we've dug ourselves in a hole, but if you go back and let's just say the internet buying age is even 5 years, 8 years, whatever, there's a whole lot of things that have been deferred.
Have there been cities that passed a use tax 5, 6 years ago that are comparisons that are doing better or worse than we are?
Say it again.
So cities 5 or 6 years ago that passed the use tax, are they doing better, worse, the same than us?
Yeah, the use tax has been a positive revenue source for many cities.
That's not, I guess that's not my question. I understand it'd be a positive revenue source because of course it's going to bring money in. But are those cities functioning better today,
Oh.
or are they just as well off or bad off as we are?
I don't know if you can
Yeah.
answer that.
I don't have a good answer for that.
If I can, I think an example that you need to maybe keep in mind might help clear. It's not terribly dissimilar to the way we used to have taxes on landlines, but that tax source dried up significantly as people moved away from landlines and went to cell phones. And one of the reasons that we've put taxes on cell phones is because they basically have eliminated the use of landlines. This use tax will recapture the revenue that it was leaving in much the same way.
I understand what it's going to do. I understand the rationale behind it. But I guess I have an issue with, one, this tax won't fix the problems that we have, and two, it is a tax, and we're asking the citizens of Rolla to pay a higher tax, which, this type of...
I don't know if that's correct. I wouldn't say we're asking to pay a higher tax. What we're saying is pay the existing sales tax on what you consume.
I guess I would disagree. If we're saying, when you buy things online, you're going to pay an additional 2.25%.
Let me give you an example. This may be a small example, and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this was eye-opening for me. Let's say you buy it from Amazon, and Amazon now has a distribution center in St. Peter's or O'Fallon. If what you bought off the internet and Amazon shipped it from that distribution center in St. Peter's, guess what you're paying? You're paying a use tax.
Yes.
And guess who you're paying it to? St. Peter's. You are paying a sales tax that St. Peter's is benefiting from and not Rolla. Had we had the use tax, you would still be paying that, only it would be coming to Rolla.
Same tax
So-
rate.
The same tax rate. So, correct, is that correct, John?
Yeah.
So think about that. So we shouldn't broadly say that we're not paying these taxes right now. We are paying them to some degree, but they're going somewhere else.
They're leaving town.
They're leaving town.
And you're saying that right now we're paying the use tax to St. Peter's even though we're not consuming...
If your product was shipped from the St. Peter's Amazon warehouse. So again, that's not.
You're going to pay a use tax. The question is, if we don't have a use tax here, you're going to pay whatever the use tax is at the point of origin.
But to qualify, if they have a use tax.
If they have a use
If they have a use tax.
And the majority of municipalities are going to use tax because they want to keep the money that was being spent in town.
Could I have one thing again too?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention the fact that I'm personally not seeing this as a new tax in the sense that in the past, if you were buying items, you would normally buy them in town. Before the internet age, there was only one place to buy them, which was somewhere at your local store or somewhere around you. So this was a tax that was being paid, and as people have gone more and more online, they've stopped paying it. But it's something that we always had before the internet age. It's just that more folks are going online now, and so we're not getting the recapture of those folks that are using the internet. So as one example, obviously there's other places besides the internet, but I think a big chunk of it would be the internet, which before the internet, people were buying things more locally, and so that tax was going to local municipalities. And so in that sense, I think I don't quite see it as just this is a new tax, we're going to be paying more tax. It's actually that our taxes have dropped off because we aren't recapturing this.
So, again, we keep talking about internet sales. That's probably the bulk of it. We clearly have to understand what the use tax is and all the little nuances, and that we're going to have to do in short order.
If I go to Sam's and load up my Suburban with groceries, do I pay a use tax there probably? If that municipality has a use tax
No, you just
you're
pay a
paying
sales tax.
You
Because
pay
you're
sales
buying
tax
it at the store.
at their rate?
Correct.
So it would be more comparable to if I drive up to Columbia and I buy my dog food there, I pay the local sales tax in Columbia. If I were to buy it online through Amazon and we had a use tax, I would be paying the tax back to Rolla,
Depends
not
on where
to,
it was bought.
depending where it was shipped from, yeah.
So I understand that this might not take care of all of our financial shortfalls, but I do think that it's a way to recapture some of what we're going to be needing in the future to just keep up with inflation. So I think it's worth having the discussion and having the education so the citizens understand what it is we're asking of them and what are the benefits to our community, even though it might result in me paying a little bit more for my stuff.
We think that the business community, some of the business community, maybe most, are going to be supportive as well, because they've been at a disadvantage as a result of this as well. And, 2%, 3% doesn't sound like much, but there are certain businesses that are extremely low margin. So there's a fairness side to it from the other perspective, so. I'm sorry? Yeah, so let's have the reading, everybody can sleep on it, and we'll revisit in 2 weeks.
An ordinance submitting to the electors of the city of Rolla, Missouri at a special election on Tuesday, November 5th, 2019, the question of whether the city shall impose a local use tax at the same rate as the municipal sales tax for the purpose of improving public safety and capital improvements and prescribing a form of ballot thereof.
So let's use the 2 weeks wisely. Any questions, hesitation, reservations that you have, please get those to City Hall, so when we come back in 2 weeks, we can answer those questions correctly. Next item, claims and/or fiscal transactions. We have one, and that's a motion awarding a bid for Project 496.
So we received bids to replace the roof on the Eugene Northern Community Hall / Rolla Fire Station number 2. We received 2 bids. One of the bids was declared non-responsive. It wouldn't have been low bid either anyway. So it was bid in 2 pieces. The base bid was just to replace the roof and remove the cupola and sheet over it and shingle over it. And then there was an alternate, an add alternate to repair that cupola. Can you pull that up so I can show everybody what that? It's in your packet, the picture with the pyramid-shaped thing on top of the building. So the base bid, it's this thing here, would remove that, and the copper piece on top would be retained by the city to do with however council seems fit. So the alternate bid was an additional $3,865. Staff is recommending we don't award that part, that we just remove and sheet over the that area. I believe it housed a fire siren. Is that correct? Storm siren. In the past, it's no longer there. It leaks a lot. So I guess I'll be asking council what's your thoughts on that.
So this is one of those items, nobody thinks about it, nobody notices it. You take it down, and guess what? Your phone's ringing off the hook. So,
Say this is one of those historical
yeah,
things in Rolla, you know.
yes. So, thoughts?
I would add that we thought it was going to come in higher than that. When we bid this out, we thought the price was going to be more significant, either on work done to the roof or the sort of freshening of the cupola. So, but I think after talking with staff, I think we're comfortable not recommending it, but I understand council's got to answer those phone calls, so it's entirely up to you. We had $25,000 budgeted. If we do the cupola, it's going to come in about $26,500.
I think it's going to be shared 50-50 between the fire department and the parks department cost.
And if we replace the cupola, will that take care of the leaking situation? Or, I mean, didn't,
So I mean,
You're not really replacing it.
right, so it'd be
Fixing it.
just repairing. So it's not complete replacement. I guess it probably says replace in here. It's meant to repair.
yeah,
I mean, it would quit leaking
for a while.
right for a time period. It is not, the structure underneath is not in very good condition. Ron, would you agree with that?
That's correct.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious, is there any sort of warranty on the roof in general, in the sense that if there were a leak, let's say at the cupola, if they did that, or anywhere else, that they would be coming back to fix that within a certain period of time?
So I would say yes, there's a warranty on their work, but there's just a lot of wood there that, they're going to be replacing the rotting wood, but, if it starts leaking in an area that they didn't work on, then there wouldn't be no warranty on that.
Is the wood the structure itself, or is it the wood on the roof that's supporting that?
The support is fine. It's all of the facade and everything underneath it is in pretty bad shape.
What we see there that's white?
The white part, yes.
And so, David, just to answer your question, there is a warranty on the roof itself. I'm not sure there's a warranty we've got on the cupola repair.
Right. I mean, the warranty would be on the flashing, workmanship type stuff.
So our
Thank you.
our packet says staff does not recommend replacing the cupola.
That would be correct.
So everybody's in agreement that that's not the best course of action.
Well, we thought it was worthwhile saving the money, to be honest, and we couldn't, in good conscience, be recommending to you to spend the extra dollars. But we understand council, as the mayor said, gets those calls about aesthetics, and so.
I don't have a problem fielding those calls. I think we should save the money.
Maybe we could auction the cupola off.
But I actually think the cupola is neat, and our thought would be that we save it, and there may be an occasion, and it's a stretch, but I thought maybe even the senior center or something like that might have a desire to renovate and use it, but
So we're gonna make it leak on a brand-new building.
well, that's for somebody else to figure out.
Okay.
Well, maybe you can make it just, decorative on a brand new building.
Yeah.
Yeah, put this.
Make a big birdhouse out of it.
Oh,
Is there a motion?
This
Of some sort.
First reading?
They'll be looking for a motion for a bid award, whether you'd award the base or the bid.
No, actually, no, it's
Motion
not
to
true.
award bid.
There's a motion to award the bid. And then your motion be specific as to which bid.
I'll move that we award the bid for the 22,705 for the roofing replacement.
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? First reading.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a certain agreement between the city of Rolla, Missouri and Just-in-Time Roofing for replacing the roof on Rolla Fire Station Number 2 at 400 West 4th Street.
The contractor has a written request that if awarded, would ask the council to waive the rules and have the second reading. What's your pleasure?
And the only thing I would add to that is in the contract where, and we bid it this way, that the work is to be done September 30th. He's saying the sooner he can get materials ordered, he can get that date, the further we push it off, the more he is uncertain of being able to complete that. But he recognizes that he bid it based on that deadline, so that's why he's making the request.
Is it September 30th because of our fiscal year?
No, I think we want to do it before the weather turned.
Both.
Okay. Council's pleasure?
I move we suspend the rules. Second.
Motion made and seconded to suspend the rules. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Let the record show 1 no. Final reading, please.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a certain agreement between the city of Rolla, Missouri and Just-in-Time Roofing for replacing the roof on Rolla Fire Station Number 2 at 400 West 4th Street.
Oh, so move.
Second.
There's a motion made and second. Roll call vote.
Schneider,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Muse,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
11 A's.
Ordinance is approved. Next section is citizen communication. Is there any citizen that would like to speak to city council? If not, moving on to mayor under city council comments. With your consent, I would like to appoint Thomas Sutton to the Board of Adjustment to replace Robin Bunch. Tom is the chief lending officer with Town and Country Bank.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The next one, with your consent, is to appoint Mr. Ted Reed to the Board of Public Works to replace Matt Williams. This appointment, if you consent to it, would be with the start of the September board meeting. Matt's term is up in August.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The third one is to appoint Dr. Stephen Young to the Rolla Regional Economic Commission. Steve is a former council person here, and I believe president of Missouri Warm Care, which is a division of MOSI.
So move.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any other council comments? Or comments for the good of the order? We have 3 real estate items to talk about in closed session. So if there's a motion to go into closed session,
So
please.
move.
Second.
Motion made in second. Roll call vote.
Schott, is that a yes?
Yes. Yes.
Muse,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
11 A's.
Slow down.
And they,
Yeah, I don't know.
oh, yeah.
Bad habit.